me introduce myself. My name is Yvette, and I am the founder of Vital Living Wellness, Yoga, and Self-Care Products. And all week I've been posting about self-hygiene and the importance of that because so many people have such a hard time sleeping. And I even did a poll this week, and I was shocked at how many people have a fitful, like restless night of sleep. And I know for me, sleep is so darn important for my well-being. If I have a bad night's sleep, I'm really not happy during the day. And I think no one around me is happy too. So I thought to myself, there's so much information out there about sleep hygiene and not drinking caffeine after a certain time and really obvious things. But there's also some things that are not very obvious that, well, especially here in the West, we don't really think about things that are really important. And I thought about you because for those of you who don't know Kaya is the founder of Supreme Release Yoga. And the way that she teaches, if you've taken classes from her, the way that she teaches her postures, it's all about proper placement of the body and even the props. And she also has some really wonderful information about in life, how to place things. And your body, when you go to sleep, is one of those things, and even where your bed is. And so I wanted to just have like a good chat with you about what does that mean? Is it important? Where do you place your bed? Does it matter which direction you sleep?
Yes. Yeah. I love the topic of sleep so much. And there's such wonderful indigenous knowledge from the Vedic tradition and from other indigenous cultures as well, I'm sure, but I'm not, familiar with, about how to sleep well, and not only how to sleep well, but why to sleep well. This is a tradition that actually explicitly explains why sleep matters and things that the modern scientific research studies on sleep are just catching up with now in their day. So yeah, I love to share a little bit of insight from Vedic architecture, which is called Vastu, and even maybe a little bit of Ayurveda, which you know well as well, about why sleep is important and how to sleep or how to arrange your space and your own body in a way to sleep really well. It's a great topic.
Yeah. Right. Well, go ahead and jump in.
Okay.
I'm excited to hear, and I'm sure everybody else is super excited to hear too.
Yeah. I'm in a bed right now. I thought that would be a really good place. We're traveling and we don't have a desk set up at the moment for working. And I thought, I'm just going to do this from bed because what better place is there to talk about? Okay. So do you mind if I share this? There's a really great quote from Ayurvedic
No, please
text.
do. Go for it.
So sweet. So this is from what's called Charaka Samhita, which is a Sanskrit text about Ayurveda. And he says, why sleep? And what happens when we don't sleep well? It's just a very brief. He says, proper sleep results in happiness, nourishment, strength, virility, knowledge, and life. Improper sleep, that could be lack of sleep or disrupted sleep, not enough sleep, results in misery, emaciation, weakness, sterility, ignorance, and death.
There you have it. Yeah.
So a little pep talk from an ancient tradition about sleep. And my son is asking for something. Look in the bathroom hanging on the hook. Okay, so do you want to talk about how to put your body for sleeping? Should we start with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, I think this is pretty clear. Everybody knows, I think, that you should lie down to sleep, right? So you shouldn't stand up, and you ideally shouldn't be, and you shouldn't be in some weird yoga pose, asana, in order to sleep. Don't try to improve on what human bodies have been doing, forever, which is you lie down to sleep. But the Vedic tradition says more about this horizontal, this lying down of the body as opposed to being upright. And that lying down or horizontal position has a name. It's called abreka. Reka means line. So it's horizontal line. And there's some really interesting things that they say, the Sanskrit texts say about what is the meaning or the effect or the influence of being in a horizontal position. So that abreka, that horizontal line, is connected to, I'm just going to list some things. It's connected to water and earth. So of course, earth we can think of quite easily as being grounded, connected to the earth, low. Water is connected to nourishment and nurturance and dreaminess, but watery things also include other things that we do in the bed besides sleep, like sex is a watery business, so to speak, right? There's liquidity involved in sexuality. Birth, traditionally, people would have been giving birth, and many people continue to give birth in their bed or in the bedroom. So birth is also a watery business and a bedroom business. Breastfeeding also traditionally happens in bed while lying down with the newborn. So these are all, and breastfeeding, of course, is also quite a watery thing to be doing. So that horizontal line is connected to water, and those are some examples of watery things, dreams and breastfeeding and so on. Healing is connected to that abreka. So when we don't feel well, of course, we want to lie down. It just comes very naturally to us. If we're exhausted or depleted or we're ill, we immediately try to lie down as soon as possible. So healing happens in a horizontal. Depth and darkness. Of course, what happens when you sleep? You go deep. You go into the depths. Depth, darkness, death. When the body dies, goes into a horizontal position because, of course, you're not holding yourself up. The horizontal line is connected to the night time and to routines, actually, to rest in general, to relaxation, to recovery. As I said, when we're ill, we lie down. When we are depleted, we lie down in that horizontal line. And horizontal lines are connected to being unconscious. So if you want to be conscious and awake and aware, you don't want to lie down because it probably won't. You won't sustain attention lying down. Sleep and sleepiness and surrender, all connected to the horizontal line. And of course, what is sleep if not the surrender that we do at least once every 24-hour period? Yeah. So those are some things about lying down. And then we could talk about the position of the body. Do you want to do that then, some more specifically?
Yeah,
on your back?
absolutely. Because there's so much different information. In fact, I was reading, so I know from Ayurvedic studies that there's a certain way to sleep. But when I was reading, like Googling different ways to sleep, most optimum ways to sleep, there was a lot of different information. So I'll just really quickly say that for me, the way that I sleep, because I tend to get really puffy at nighttime, like my my circulation, it just, obviously because I'm sleeping, I'm not moving, it's very slow. So when I wake up in the morning, it's always been this way ever since I was a child. I'd wake up and my face is puffy. And so laying down on my left side works better for me. It helps with the circulation better. So when I wake up, I'm less puffy. However, when my mind is really busy and I can't, like I'm thinking, I lay down on my right side, and there's purpose to that. And so will you talk about the difference between laying on your right and left sides and how that is relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's also, of course, information out there now about, sleep on your back. Maybe that's better. So look at that as what are the options if you're getting in a horizontal line? You can sleep on your belly face down. You can sleep on your back face up, or you can sleep on one or the other side. The Ayurveda and Vedic tradition overall says there's this sort of old saying, which is a rogi sleeps on the belly, and a rogi is a bhogi sleeps on the belly, and a bhogi is an enjoyment seeker, a drunkard. And so you can imagine the drunk person coming home and face down. So bhogi sleeps on the belly. Arogi sleeps on the back, and that's a sick person. And in fact, if you're not feeling well, let's say you're congested or you're coughing,
Right.
then that is an appropriate time to sleep on your back. It's kind of the only way most people can get a little, and even sitting up a little bit. These aren't really ideal positions for sleep, all things being equal. But when you're unwell, you do tend to sleep on your back. Or if your back is hurting, you tend to sleep on your back, maybe with your legs elevated. A lot of people figure that out if they have back pain. So that's not the ideal position for a well person. But an unwell person, a rogi, sleeps on their back. But if you consistently sleep on your back when you are well, they say you will become a rogi. You will gather illness to the body. So belly and back sleep are out as far as the yoga tradition, the Vedic tradition says. So we're left with sleeping on the side. So it is ideal, they say, to sleep on your side. And most modern sleep science does, kind of confirm or agree with that. Sleep on your side. And there are debates about left versus right side. But I think most people listening to this who do sleep on their side would probably agree that they tend to switch sides throughout the night. They might favor one side or favor certain sides at certain times, as you mentioned. But most side sleepers will toss, from one side to the other throughout the night, unless they are an extremely deep sleeper and, they barely move. So either side, the tradition says either side, as long as you're sleeping on your side, and that means, kind of in this zigzag position with your knees bent, either side is beneficial. But then you can get really refined about it and which side you want to open, so to speak. And that's, I think, what you're pointing to. So there's, at the physiological level, there's different things to say about circulation and the heart or the digestion. Ideally, we don't go to sleep at night with a really full food to digest. That's a whole other topic, but it's going to be sleep hygiene, of course. But at the subtle level, which I'll talk about, which you were pointing to with, choosing the other side, is whichever side you're sleeping on, all right, we say it's the other side that opens. And this is more of the subtle body realm, the channels of the body, the channels of prana or life force. So in other words, if I sleep on my right side, then what happens is the sort of heaviness of the body collects on the right side. That's why you'll get, the puffiness on that side of your body, all the lymphatic fluid and everything. And also the subtle level, there's more of a heaviness on that side. And the upside, the side that's not leaning into the bed, that side opens. Here we're talking about physiologically, but also the channels, the subtle channels. So why would you choose one versus the other? When the left side is open, that means you're lying on your right side. Left side is connected to calm, peacefulness, tranquility, surrender, kind of receptivity. Some people would use the word passiveness. That's not really an ideal word, but it's a calm, receptive kind of a state when the left channel is open. So if you're needing to cultivate that rest, digest, relax, quiet your mind, be more receptive rather than active, you'd want to lie on your right side so that the left channel is open.
Would you consider that more like lunar qualities being more? Okay.
Exactly. So that's lunar. We would say that the divine feminine side, and of course that is not connected to, biological gender. Everybody has, divine feminine, masculine. So the left is the divine feminine, the lunar side. And so very many people will find, at least to calm in order to prepare for sleep, if they could choose a side, it's better to lie on the right side to open the left channel. But there are some cases to be made physiologically for sleeping on your left side instead, around digestion, potentially circulation, all of those things, depending on who you ask. So the right side is connected to the sun as opposed to the moon, fire, digestion, activity, mental activity, physical activity, being engaged, the divine masculine, things like that. And so if you are for some reason wanting to cultivate a little bit more of engagement. Maybe there's been more kind of too much receptivity or too much kind of lack of activity. To use Ayurveda, maybe there's more kapha, not enough heat, more sluggishness. Then you might lay on your left side to open up the right channel. Again, maybe if you're trying to digest, and this is something we do in Ayurveda, sometimes my one kid who just loves every kind of food will eat so much and then after say, I feel so full, so it's your left side help the digestion. And there's anatomical, physiological reasons for that, but subtly it's also because it's opening the right channel, which is your digestion and warming and sun side. So that's a little bit about.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that your son, you've posted videos and pictures of him falling asleep with food in front of him, like eating with his eyes closed. So I know what you're talking about. But yes, that definitely speaks to the way that I sleep too. And there's a lot of research that's coming out now, like you were saying, that's pointing people to sleep on their backs. Like they have those beds where you can do zero gravity. And they say that that's supposed to be like, the new best way to sleep. But is that really accurate? Right?
Yeah.
So
I have theories about that. And it's essentially what I think is it's because we have an ill society right now.
Right.
We have a society of roga, of illness.
Yeah.
And as I said, if you're ill, you are more likely to be more comfortable on your back. So much back pain. I mean, we have, back pain is so common for people, low back pain in particular, and digestive issues are common, and poor sleep is common, and illness in general, and respiratory conditions, and clogged nasal passageways, and all of these things. So we are a sick society in a way. And so we are sleeping in the way that people sleep when they're sick, which is that rogi sleeping on your back. There's something to be said about weightless experience. You and I are both lovers of shavasana with the legs elevated, and that's a beautiful experience. And there's so much benefit to that for deep relaxation and surrender and healing and recovery and receptivity. But it's not the way to sleep every night for the rest of your life. If you do that, you will just overall become more ill. Yeah.
Okay. So I understand that there's a certain direction too that your head should face to get optimum rest.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Point the head. So people have heard of this in feng shui, perhaps. A lot of confusion. There's been popularized wrong information in feng shui about the head pointing, and then in Vastu, in the Vedic tradition of Vedic architecture, we also have this teaching about which way should, essentially it's the top of your head be pointing when you're sleeping, or you could say, like behind me, the head of the bed. Where should the head of the bed be on? People get confused, so I'll repeat it a couple times, because sometimes they think it's which way is your face facing while you're sleeping on your side, or which way are you facing when you sit up. So it's when you're lying down, most likely on your side, what wall, in terms of the cardinal directions, north, south, west, and east, which wall is the top of your head pointing to, or what wall is the head on? So I'll give the order, and then I can explain a little bit more if you want, and give some context as well.
Yeah.
Just the basic answer to where should I point my head when I'm sleeping is the best choice, all things being equal, is the top of your head or the head of your bed pointing to the south, or being on the southern wall of your sleeping space. The next best is west. So best option is south. Next best option is west. Third choice is east. And north pointing is to be avoided at all costs.
Okay. So can you talk about why that is for all of those different directions?
Yeah. So, and also the context in terms of, if you now go into your bedroom and figure out, well, which wall, of course, your home or your sleeping space may not be aligned exactly with the cardinal direction. So you might
Right.
have the southeast wall and so on. So you do your best given that reality. And then there's other factors, like it may be that your south wall has the closet and the
Right.
door room and a built-in shelf or something, and it's impossible to have your head there. So you also work with the circumstance of the room. There's more to it than that, but these are kind of
Mhm.
the basic answer. And then, when you're actually doing on-site Vastu or Vedic architecture, then you have to look at all these other factors. There's all kinds of things like you don't want to sleep with your head pointing to where the opposite side of the wall has plumbing, lots of running
Right.
water. There's all these other factors, but these are kind of all things being equal. And certainly when we travel, one of the first things we do, we figure out where to put our altar, and we figure out where the health food store is, and we figure out
I was
where,
going to ask you about that.
where are the heads pointing, and is the furniture movable? And we generally, because we have kids, for those who are, have children, it's actually usually best to pick the bed with the best orientation for the adults.
Okay.
They say when mom is happy, everyone's happy. If mama
Right.
ain't happy, everybody happy. So
Right. Yes.
the adults sleep first.
Mhm.
Kids definitely sleep how they sleep, no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay, so now why? Each of the cardinal directions has certain kind of meanings associated with them. So the northern direction, which is the one to avoid for sleep, north is connected to knowledge. North knowledge, wakefulness, awareness, enlightenment. Beautiful meanings. All of these,
Yeah.
though, are the opposite to sleep. Sleep is unconsciousness, darkness, non-awareness. So north is to be avoided because if you sleep with your head to the north, you are, especially if you're more sensitive, if you're a great sleeper, no matter what, then you don't have to worry about any of this, but you're probably not watching this if you're a great sleeper.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So that's why north is to be avoided. North is associated with knowledge, wakefulness, awareness, and so on. The east is also associated with wakefulness, but not as intensely. So that's why east is third choice.
Mhm.
If with your head pointing east, they say it's better than north, but you are more likely to have dreams, dreamful sleep. Now, if you dream and you're asking for omens and insight through dreams, you might for a period of time choose to sleep to the east with your head pointing east or the head of your bed to the eastern wall, just to get a little bit of that kind of slightly more awareful sleep where you might get insight through dreams. But it's not a good long-term
Mhm.
setup. But the east has some connection to healing, and so that is what makes it, relatively okay, better than the north. But still, it's your third best choice. So definitely not the top. We try to stick with the top two. So next best, second best is west, and west is connected to rest. It's a good way to remember it. West is also connected to the ancestors, the past. Lots of other meanings, but in terms of sleep, it's connected to restfulness, heaviness, and kind of the past, which is also connected to lying down. Your very best choice is the south. South is connected to seriousness and to heaviness and also to healing, like the east. And so, when you're sleeping, you are more serious because you're unconscious. There's depth, there's heaviness, it's low, there's non-awareness. It's the opposite to north, where north is all about awareness and knowledge. South is all about unconsciousness, the depths. And that's what we want for deep sleep.
So interesting. So I was going to ask you, because I know that you guys have been traveling a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and also traveling in your van.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you guys are, picking somewhere to sleep for the night? Do you park your van in a certain direction so that your head is facing south
Yeah.
or west? So you might be parked totally weird in the parking lot.
It happened once. trouble at a campsite because we had parked like not exactly where you were supposed to park because we were prioritizing our sleep. It's the funny reasons that we might break the rules that are, for the rules of the cosmic order over the rules of
Right.
the right. So, yes, we're not in our van currently, but when we were traveling in a travel van for a period, we would, when possible, think about orienting, how we were parking the van so that at least we had two beds and they were facing two different directions in the van, but at least 2 out of 4 people would be having their heads pointing in a good direction for sleep. And now that we're traveling and, staying with family or going to Airbnbs and things like that, we definitely arrive and then figure out, is there a way to reorient the bed? Or if there's an extra bedroom, we'll choose the bedrooms with, the best orientation for our heads as much as possible. This is where all the other sleep hygiene things come, into play so well as well, because when you're traveling, for example, you can't control your environment.
Yeah.
In life, you can't control your life circumstances all the time or much of the time. Life is imperfect and we have disruptions and things don't go the way we want them to and the mind gets disturbed. And so all the other sleep habits help anchor and stabilize you, even if your bed isn't pointing the right way while you're traveling or things don't go the way you want them to. It's so good to have those sleep routines that anchor you kind of no matter what. And then we find even when you establish that routine of, for the most part, no one gets perfect sleep all of the time. Even people like you and I who know a lot about get perfect sleep every night. But if we get good sleep most of the time, then we can survive the times when we don't get perfect sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. It's so true. So just to reiterate, so if you're feeling sick, if you're getting over some kind of illness, then you'll want to sleep on your back, correct?
Likely to, and it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. And for people who so interesting question that kept coming up is, well, what if I can fall asleep totally fine, but I have this tendency to wake up in the middle of the night? Which position should I fall asleep in?
In my opinion, it's best to sleep in the position that you hope to sleep through the night. Actually find there are people that say, well, I fall asleep really well on my back. Can I do that and then roll that? Absolutely. But also know, if you make a habit of falling asleep on your back, you always will have to wake up in order to go onto your side. So it's good to try to cultivate the ability to fall asleep on your side, switch sides as needed. And and then sleeping with your head to the south or the west should reduce or can reduce that middle of the night wakefulness. Then there's all other things that really aren't about, I could mention another thing that's Vastu about better sleep. We can get to that in a moment. There's other things like certain herbs and other habits that help people to sleep through the night. I'll also say that if you're taking alcohol or marijuana, either for enjoyment, pleasure, other reasons, or to help you sleep at night, that can help you fall asleep. But generally what the sleep science says is your body will wake up when that substance wears off. So it's better to not rely on those kinds of substances. I don't mind CBD and some THC for some people. I think that can really do the trick. But you have to get the doses exactly right over time so that there's not this kind of wearing off experience where people wake up. So there's other things to be said about, in Ayurveda and so on, about helping with that middle of the night kind of wake up call, which is generally a pitta, or it could be vata, depending on how, at what time of day. But certainly these other things, sleeping on your side and pointing the head in the right direction, because if your head is pointing north or east and you are a more sensitive sleeper or more sensitive to energetics and so on, then you may be waking up because you're having more wakeful sleep, less deep sleep, more dreams. Dreams, those might be waking you up. Yeah.
So something really interesting. So for my husband, he's very pitta, as you know, he has always had issues with sleep. And for as long as I've known him, where the bed is positioned is in the north. However, the way that the room is laid out is that the other end, the other opposite wall from the north that's facing south, there's a mirror closet there. So, should we turn the bed around so that our head's facing the mirror?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So that brings up another thing. Some people think, well, what if I just keep the bed where it is and just
right.
my body? And don't do that, because then you're sleeping with your head in the middle of the room, which is anxiety provoking at a kind of a biological level. It is also the center of the room is the place of the divine, we say. So it again is the place of enlightenment, and is the place where you shouldn't inhabit it. So don't flip. Everyone listening, don't keep your bed where it is if it's facing north, and just flip your body and have your head sort of in the middle of the room, so to speak. Move the head of the bed. So yeah, ideally you wouldn't have your head up against a mirror. You wouldn't have your head into a built-in shelf, because that's anxiety provoking. In fact, when we got a big heavy like one of these frames over the head of the bed, and moved that immediately. I'm not going to sleep with a big heavy piece of glass dangling above my head. Get those things away. So what's the west wall? What do you have going on in your bedroom on the west wall?
On the west wall is the wall that separates our bedroom from our bathroom. And it's sort of a half wall because the bathroom door is there. So the bed won't fit on that side.
So this is such a good example, because this is what happens when theories are fine and good. But then when we do on-site Vastu, you see how we're limited. So now, if you told me, well, our heads are pointing north and we can't do any other direction, but we sleep great.
Right.
I
do. I do, but he's like tossing and turning and
it's a couple. This is exactly what happens. That bed is oriented wrong. I don't like to use that right, wrong, but bed is oriented wrong. And one half of the couple sleeps great and the other does not. Yeah. If you're both sleeping, I would say leave it. What's happening on your eastern wall?
On the eastern wall, that wall is free. So we could do that. We could turn the bed so that our head is against that wall. Yeah. So that is an option.
It's better than north, right? North is too okay. East is better. So that's one way I would, work with this situation. Doing Vastu, I would say try the eastern wall and see what happens. I'm going to ask you something else in a moment. But the that we have done so my husband Michael and I, we both work with people and do Vastu. Yep. The other thing we've done with people on occasion is had them switch bedrooms. So let's say you're in a 3-bedroom house. One of the occupants has perhaps gone off to college or has moved out, the former occupants of one of the bedrooms. Yeah. Or one room, guest room, and often it's clear, but this is the master and we're supposed to sleep in the master and it has the attached bath or whatever. We would still say, you know what? Put your guests in that room, make that the guest room, or make that the 20-something who's coming home for summer breaks. They're not sleeping tonight anyway. Right. And you take another room that maybe isn't the master, but what do you really need, for a bedroom? You need to sleep. And so if we make sleep a priority, because how you sleep affects how you live, and how you live affects sleep. I would say, is there another available bedroom in the home that you could switch to the master bedroom and try it for a month or two and get your heads on the west or the south, ideally west second option wall. And of course it takes a little time to adapt, to change. So the first couple of nights don't count because change is hot because you don't sleep well. So you give that a try and then see. I always say it's better to be in the bedroom that, where you can orient right and get good sleep, than to be in the master, whatever that means.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, we can definitely do. We don't have an extra room. Only one of them is off at college and the other one is still home. So we don't have that ability to do it. But we could definitely go head to east. That's an option. We'll just see how that goes, because he's a sensitive sleeper. So, we can see how that works. I'm a sound sleeper, so I think I'll be okay.
You'll be, and, so, you can also play with, if there's one person, let's say the 20-something who's still home is a good sleeper or is out partying anyway. Sure. What do they care? You could switch them, and they usually don't mind getting a new room and having some change, and you get the master and you get more space. And,
absolutely.
So we try to just break out of our conventional thinking, because again, convention and conventional modern thinking in particular isn't always in accord with cosmic order. In fact, it's often in discord.
I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason why we're in such trouble with illnesses and, people just feeling really out of sorts all the time. It's because of all of these modern, they're, what can be really wonderful, but at the same time, if we do them for long periods of time, then there's always that result of not feeling well and not being well.
Totally.
And so what's really interesting, you go first.
Else about your bed, or make another suggestion that I think other people will find really interesting, that has to do with how we orient. So we talked about the cardinal directions, but there's also a way to stack the elements in a space from sort of ceiling to floor. Mm-hmm. And you'll be familiar with this because those elements are stacked always this way in Ayurveda, which is the highest level of the room is akasha, it's space. And then vayu, air. And then the middle realm of the room, from floor to ceiling, is agni, it's fire. And then below that is water. And then all the way connected to the floor is earth. So this brings in, how high is the bed? So the bed that I'm on right now, where we're staying, would actually fall into the category of being an agni bed, a fiery bed. And my husband, who is more pitta than I am and runs hot, he does not sleep very well in this bed, not because of the orientation, but because of the height. So it is a high bed, the kind of bed that you have to climb up to get into. And so sometimes the issue is actually the height of the bed. If the bed was even higher, let's take a kid's bunk bed, right? The top bunk bed is in the air realm, so it's not as
so interesting.
Yeah. Now a bed on the floor is more earth. It's more lethargic if the bed is all the way on the floor. The perfect bed height is a little bit off the floor, like up, let's say about a foot or so off of the floor. So the Japanese style tatami, for example, or a lower bed, for example, these are really good options if your goal is deep, well, restful, nourishing sleep. So you can also play with the height of your bed and see what happens there.
This gets so intricate. In fact, and this is probably a conversation for another time, but in studying with Michael, there's even a right way to get out of bed and which foot you step out of bed first. And so we'll save that for a different conversation, but it's all these things matter. And it just really goes back to, like having awareness for every single thing that we do, so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing all that stuff.
I love sharing, and I love, bringing it back to the awareness factor, bringing awareness to things. That helps everything, even if immediately your sleep doesn't change. And on that note, it's not then to get a complex about it. Like,
right.
Went in the wrong way, or I'm a bad sleeper, and you get this new identity, or my bed is at the wrong height or whatever. It's to bring awareness, but awareness that's not about self-criticism or getting a complex, but awareness that brings objectivity, so that instead of saying, oh, I'm a bad sleeper, we might be able to say, oh, I perhaps have been someone who's tended to sleep with my head oriented to the north, or I've been sleeping on high beds, or I've been eating really big meals before I go to bed, or I work out before I go to bed, or all these other things that sleep. And so you can kind of release yourself from guilt, shame, blame, and any other kind of complex you have, and look objectively and say, there's an explanation, and there are actually some tools that I can apply to disrupt, what the past has been. So
Absolutely. And sometimes when we get so wrapped up in things having to be a certain way, it causes more anxiety anyway. So it's like, what's the point, right?
Totally. These things should free us in a feeling of choice and using our will to make our lives better. So
absolutely
helps with that, and all the other things that you're helping people with, helps them use their will better. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much.
Is
there anything else that we need to know? Any other important things that stand out that we need to know?
I'll share one more about that.
Okay.
This is something really sweet that I was just looking at before we got on here. This is from an Upanishad. So this is an ancient Sanskrit text that actually talks about the different states of awareness. One of them being deep, dreamless sleep state. And there's a part of this text that praises sleep, the way that a religious text would praise, a form of the divine. It actually praises the deep sleep state as a form of the divine. And it says, in the deep sleep state, consciousness is blissfully experiencing the bliss of itself. And it is blissful because of the utter absence of effort.
Love that.
I do too.
Absolutely love that. So beautiful.
Dreamless sleep for everyone.
Yes. Hopefully everyone will have a good night's rest tonight.
Or have some tools, from you to help them soon enough.
And, one thing that stood out to me too is for people who don't already study with you, is that your Yoga Nidra program covers a lot of this information too. Is that still available for people to study?
So people can go to yogawithkaya.com and they can look for the Nectar of Nidra. This is a course on yogic sleep, but also on sleep itself. So we dedicate several hours to what you and I talked about, Ayurveda and sleep, modern sleep science, how to sleep well, tools to sleep well, the water line, and then we get into yogic sleep, Yoga Nidra, as people know it, and Shavasana and things like that. And then I also have on demand, you can take it anytime, a course on Vastu, on Vedic architecture. And we go deep, so much more. And then we spend a little bit of time on, where does the bed go? But that's just one little tiny part of it. We look at the different shapes and what they mean and the cardinal directions. And we look at actual, architecture, and we look at the architecture of the body. And that's a really, really fun one too, that kind of totally transforms how you see the world and all of the environments that you're in. So
awesome. And so where can they find that again?
They can find the Yoga Nidra program and the Vastu program on my website, which is yogawithkaya, KAYA.com.
Yeah, I highly recommend those programs. The Yoga Nidra program was one of my favorite programs and teachings that you've done. It goes so deep, and I started sleeping so much better when I did that program. Well, actually, you did that program with my teacher training group, but I just happened to benefit from it, from being there. And I started sleeping better from a lot of that information that I learned in that program. So for those of you who do have a hard time sleeping, I highly recommend that program. And not only is it good for sleep, but it's also so good for people who tend to get depleted easily, people who need that nurturing, that they need more nurturing and rest and nourishment in their life, because you can't sleep all day long, right? We don't have time to sleep all day long, but Yoga Nidra is an opportunity for us to get deep nourishment throughout the day if we need to. So I highly recommend the program.
Thing that's like it's something that we value daily instead of something that we feel guilty about or default to,
Right.
totally depleted and are in recovery mode. That you can learn how to value sleep and restfulness and receptivity every day as part of your life to stay well. So I'm so glad to hear all
So
of that.
good. Yes. Thank you, Kaya.
Thank you,
I hope
Yvette.
that you have a great day and you guys are enjoying your travels and visiting family and whatnot. And hopefully you guys are getting some good night's sleep too.
We are actually. Thank you. Love.
Yes. We'll talk again. And again, next time we should talk